Night on the Galactic Railroad. Chapter 1. The Afternoon Lesson. Now then, can any of you tell me what this faint white band truly is? The one that people have called a river, or the trace of spilled milk? The teacher spoke, pointing to the large black star chart hanging on the wall. Across it, from top to bottom, ran a pale, misty streak, like a softly clouded belt of light. Campanella raised his hand, then 4, 5 others followed. Giovanni, too, began to lift his hand, and quickly stopped. He had read once, in a magazine, that it was made of stars, and yet, these days, he felt sleepy in class, and he had neither the time nor the books to read. More and more, he felt as though he understood nothing clearly at all. But the teacher had already noticed. Giovanni, you know the answer, don't you? Giovanni sprang to his feet. Yet, once he stood there, he found he could not say it plainly. From the seat in front of him, Zanelli turned and gave a small, suppressed laugh. Giovanni felt his face burn red. The teacher spoke again. When we observe the Milky Way through a large telescope, what does it appear to be? Stars. Giovanni thought, of course, stars, and yet, once again, the answer would not come. The teacher hesitated for a moment, then turned his gaze toward Campanella. Well then, Campanella, the boy who had raised his hand so eagerly, now rose slowly, fidgeting, and he too could not answer. The teacher regarded him in surprise, then quickly said, "Very well." Pointing once more to the chart, he continued, "If you observe this faint white band of the Milky Way through a powerful telescope, you will see that it is nothing more than a multitude of tiny stars. Isn't that right, Giovanni?" His face still flushed, nodded, and then, before he knew it, his eyes filled with tears. Yes, I knew it. And of course, Campanella knew it too. It was written in a magazine, the one we read together at his father's house, the doctor's house. More than that, whenever we came upon such a thing, Campanella would hurry to his father's study, bring out a great, heavy book, open it to the page on the Milky Way, and there, across the deep black pages, were beautiful photographs, countless white specks, scattered in darkness. The two of us would gaze at them for a long, long time. There was no reason Campanella could have forgotten, and yet he had not answered. Perhaps Giovanni thought it was because, lately, I have been so tired. Work in the morning, work again in the afternoon. Even at school, I no longer play cheerfully with the others. I hardly speak to Campanella anymore. Perhaps he knows that. Perhaps he pitied me and chose not to answer on purpose. When Giovanni thought this, an unbearable sadness rose within him, as though both he and Campanella were somehow very, very lonely. The teacher continued. So then, if we imagine the Milky Way to be truly a river, each tiny star would be like grains of sand and pebbles lying at the bottom of its stream. And if we imagine it instead as a great river of milk, then it resembles the Milky Way even more closely. Each star would be like a small sphere of cream floating delicately within the milk. And what, then, would correspond to the water of that river? It is what we call the vacuum, that which carries light at a certain speed. The sun and the earth, too, are floating within it. In other words, we ourselves are living in the waters of the Milky Way. And when we look outward in every direction from within those waters, just as water appears deeper blue, the deeper it becomes, so too the far depths of the Milky Way seem crowded with countless stars, and therefore appear pale and softly white. Now, take a look at this model. The teacher pointed to a large double convex lens, within which countless shining grains were scattered. This, he said, is very much like the shape of the Milky Way. Imagine that each glowing particle is a star, shining by its own light, just as our sun does. Suppose our sun lies somewhere near the center, and that the earth is close beside it. Picture yourselves standing here at night, at this very center, looking out in every direction through the lens. On this side, the glass is thin. You would see only a few shining particles, that is, only a few stars. But over here and here, the glass is thick. There you would see many shining particles, and those that are far away would appear faint and softly white. That, in essence, is the present understanding of the galaxy. As for how large this lens truly is, and what kinds of stars lie within it, we are out of time for today. We shall speak of that in our next science lesson. But tonight is the festival of the Milky Way. So go outside and look carefully at the sky. That will be all for today. Close your books and notebooks. For a while, the classroom filled with the sounds of desks opening, closing, books being stacked, pages gathered. Before long, the students rose neatly to their feet, bowed in unison, and quietly left the room. Night on the Galactic Railroad. Chapter 2. The Printing House. As Giovanni stepped out through the school gate, 7 or 8 boys from his class had not gone home. They had gathered beneath the cherry tree at the corner of the schoolyard, with Campanella standing at the center. It seemed they were planning to go and gather karasu uri gourds, to hollow them out, fit them with blue lights, and set them afloat on the river for the Star Festival that night. But Giovanni swung his arms wide and strode straight out through the gate. Throughout the town, families were busy with preparations for the festival of the Milky Way. Some hung round ornaments of yew leaves. Others fastened small lights to branches of cypress. Everywhere there was a sense of quiet anticipation. Giovanni did not return home. Instead, after turning 3 corners through the town, he entered a large printing house. He removed his shoes and stepped inside, then opened the great door. At the far end, though it was still daytime, electric lights were burning. Many rotary presses thundered and clattered as they turned. Workers, their heads wrapped in cloth or shaded by lamp covers, read aloud, counted softly, their voices rising and falling, almost like fragments of song. Giovanni went at once to the 3rd tall desk from the entrance and bowed to the man seated there. The man searched the shelves for a moment, then said, "Think you can pick up this much?" and handed him a slip of paper. Giovanni took a small flat box from beneath the desk, then crouched in a corner near a wall lined with bright lamps. With a tiny pair of tweezers, he began lifting pieces of type, each no larger than a grain of millet, one after another. A man wearing a blue apron passed behind him and said, "Well now, little magnifying glass, good morning." 4 or 5 workers nearby gave a cold, silent laugh without even turning to look at him. Giovanni wiped his eyes again and again and continued picking up the tiny pieces of type, one after another. A little while after 6 o'clock, he compared the box, now filled with type, to the slip of paper in his hand. Then he carried it back to the man at the tall desk. The man took it without a word and gave a faint nod. Giovanni bowed, opened the door, and went to the accounting counter. There, a man in a white coat silently handed him a single, small, silver coin. Suddenly, Giovanni's face brightened. He bowed briskly, snatched up the bag he had left beneath the counter, and dashed out into the street. Whistling cheerfully, he stopped at a bakery and bought a loaf of bread and a bag of sugar cubes. Then, without looking back, he set off at a run. Chapter 3. Home. Giovanni hurried home to a small house in a narrow back street. Of the 3 doorways standing side by side, the one on the left had empty wooden boxes set outside, planted with purple kale and asparagus. The 2 small windows remained shaded, their sunscreens still lowered. Mother, I'm home. You didn't feel worse, did you? Giovanni said, removing his shoes. Ah, Giovanni, your work must have been hard, but today is cool. I have felt quite well all day. Giovanni stepped inside. His mother lay in the front room, covered lightly with a white cloth. He went to the window and opened it. Mother, I bought sugar cubes today. I thought I'd put some in your milk. Ah, you eat first. I don't want any yet. Mother, when did sister come home? Oh, around 3. She tidied up a little. Has the milk arrived? Perhaps it hasn't. I'll go get it. No, I'm not in any hurry. You eat first. Your sister made something with tomatoes. She left it there. Then I'll eat. Giovanni took the plate of tomatoes from the windowsill and ate together with the bread, quietly, for a while. Mother, I think Father will be home soon. I think so too. But why do you think that? Because this morning's newspaper said the fishing in the northern seas was very good this year. But your father may not have gone out to sea. He must have. I'm sure he did. There is no way Father would have done something so wrong as to be sent to prison. The large crab shell he brought back once and donated to the school, and the horn from a hunting knife. They are still there in the specimen room. Even the 6th graders, when they have lessons, the teachers take them into the classroom, one after another. Your father said next time he would bring you a coat of sea otter fur. Yes, whenever the boys see me, they say that, as if to tease. They speak badly to you? Yes, but Campanella never does. When the others say such things, he looks as if he feels sorry. Campanella's father and your father, I heard, were friends since they were small, just like you two. Is that so? That's why Father used to take me to Campanella's house. Those days were good. On my way home from school, I often stopped there. They had a train, one that ran on an alcohol lamp. If you connected 7 pieces of track. It made a circle. There were telegraph poles, signal posts, and when the train passed, the signal light turned blue. Once, when we ran out of alcohol, we tried using kerosene, and the little tin became completely black with soot. Is that so? I still go there every morning to deliver the newspapers, but it is always quiet, the whole house still asleep. It is early, after all. They have a dog named Sour. Its tail is like a broom. When I go there, it sniffs and follows me all the way to the corner of town. Sometimes. Tonight, they're going to float the lantern-lit gourds down the river. I'm sure the dog will go too. Yes, tonight is the festival of the Milky Way. Yes, I'll take a look while I fetch the milk. All right. But don't go into the river. No, I'll only watch from the bank. I'll be back in an hour. Stay out longer, if you like. If you're with Campanella, I need not worry. Yes, we'll be together. Mother, shall I close the window? Yes, please do. It's already cool. Giovanni stood, closed the window, put away the plate and the bread bag, then slipped on his shoes. I'll be back in an hour and a half, he said, and stepped out through the dark doorway. Chapter 4. The night of the Centaurus festival. Giovanni descended the hill, his lips shaped as though he were whistling, though the sound was faint and lonely. The dark row of cypress trees lined the slope in silence. At the bottom, a single great street lamp stood, glowing with a pale blue light. As he walked down toward it, the long, blurred shadow that had trailed behind him, like a ghost, grew darker, sharper, and clearer. It lifted its legs, swung its arms, and moved to Giovanni's side. I am a splendid locomotive, Giovanni thought. This is a steep grade. I am running fast. Now I pass the lamp. And look, my shadow's cap has turned like a compass, spinning round and coming before me. Just as he strode beneath the light, Zanelli, wearing a new shirt with a sharp pointed collar, suddenly stepped out from a dark alley beyond the lamp and brushed past him. Zanelli, are you going to float the gourds? Giovanni had barely begun to say when the boy shouted back at him, almost as if throwing it. Giovanni, your father's sending you a sea otter coat. Giovanni's chest turned cold. It felt as though a high, sharp ringing echoed all around him. What do you mean, Zanelli? He cried back. But the boy had already disappeared into the house, beyond the arbor vitae hedge. Why would he say that? Giovanni thought. I've done nothing to him. He runs like a mouse, and yet he says such things. He says it because he is foolish. Thinking in restless bursts, Giovanni passed through the town, which had been beautifully adorned with lanterns and branches of trees. The clockmaker's shop was lit brightly with neon light. Each second, the red stone eyes of a carved owl rotated slowly. Jewels set upon a thick glass dial, colored like the sea, turned quietly like stars. From the opposite side, a copper centaur revolved slowly toward him. At the center, a round, black star chart was decorated with blue asparagus leaves. Giovanni forgot himself and gazed into the star map. It was smaller than the one he had seen at school, but when the dial was turned to match the day and hour, the sky at that moment appeared within its oval frame. Across its middle, from top to bottom, the Milky Way stretched, a faint smoky band. Near the lower edge, it seemed almost to burst, as though steam were rising from it. Behind the display, a small telescope with 3 slender legs stood, glowing yellow. And on the far wall, a great chart hung, showing constellations shaped like strange beasts, serpents, fish, and jars. Are there truly so many scorpions, so many heroes crowding the sky? Ah, how I wish I could walk among them, Giovanni thought, standing there for a long while. Then suddenly he remembered his mother's milk. He left the shop, though he felt the tightness in the shoulders of his worn coat. He deliberately straightened, threw back his chest, and walked on through the town. The air was so clear, it flowed through the streets and into the shops like water. The street lamps were wrapped in deep blue fur and oak branches. Before the electric company, 6 great plane trees glowed from within, hung with countless tiny lights, so that the place seemed like a city of mermaids. Children, all dressed in freshly pressed garments, whistled the melody of star circling, ran shouting, "Centaurus, let the dew fall," and burned blue magnesium fireworks, laughing in delight. But Giovanni, once again, lowered his head. While the town shone with celebration, he hurried toward the milk shop, thinking thoughts entirely different from the brightness around him. Before long, Giovanni found himself at the edge of town, where rows of tall poplar trees rose high into the starlit sky. He entered the black gate of the milk shop and stood before the dim kitchen, which carried the faint scent of cows. Removing his cap, he said, "Good evening." The house was silent. No one seemed to be there. "Good evening. Excuse me," he called again, standing straight. After a while, An elderly woman emerged slowly, as though unwell, and muttered, "What do you want?" "The milk did not come to our house today. I came to fetch it," Giovanni said earnestly. "There's no one here now. Come tomorrow," she replied, rubbing beneath her red eyes and looking down at him. "My mother is ill. We need it tonight." "Then come back a little later," she said, already turning away. "I see. Thank you." Giovanni bowed and left the kitchen. As he reached the crossroads of the town, he saw, near the shop that led toward the bridge, a cluster of dark figures, white shirts glimmering faintly. 6 or 7 boys were approaching, whistling, laughing, each carrying a lantern-lit gourd. Their laughter, their whistles, were all familiar. They were his classmates. Giovanni started and almost turned back, but he changed his mind and walked toward them with forced boldness. "Are you going to the river?" he tried to say, but his throat tightened. "Giovanni, your sea otter coat is coming," Zanelli shouted again. "Giovanni, your sea otter coat is coming." The others echoed. Giovanni's face burned red. He could scarcely tell whether he was walking at all as he hurried past them, and among them he saw Campanella. Campanella looked at him with a faint, pitying smile, as though unsure whether Giovanni might grow angry. Giovanni avoided his eyes, almost as if fleeing. Campanella's tall figure passed behind him. Soon, the boys scattered, whistling in different directions. At the corner of the street, Giovanni turned to look back. Zanelli, too, had turned to look, and Campanella, whistling clearly, walked on toward the faint outline of the bridge. A deep loneliness rose within Giovanni. Suddenly, he began to run. Nearby, little children, with their hands over their ears, jumped on one foot, crying out, "Wah! Wah!" Seeing Giovanni run, they thought it was a game and shouted, "Yay!" Before long, Giovanni was racing toward the dark hill. Chapter 5. The Weather Wheel Pillar. Behind the pasture, the land rose into a gentle hill. Its dark, flat summit lay beneath the Great Bear, appearing lower than usual, dimly linked against the sky. Giovanni climbed the narrow woodland path, already damp with dew, through the darkness of grass and tangled shrubs, each taking strange shapes. The small white trail shone faintly in the starlight. Among the grass, tiny insects glimmered with sharp blue light. Certain leaves seemed to glow through, and Giovanni thought they were like the lantern-lit cords the others had carried away. Beyond the black pines and oaks, the sky suddenly opened. The Milky Way stretched pale and luminous from south to north, and at the summit he could make out the pillar of the weather wheel. Bellflowers, or perhaps wild chrysanthemums, covered the ground, their fragrance rising as though from a dream. A single bird passed over the hill, calling as it flew. Giovanni reached the pillar and threw himself down upon the cool grass, his body still pounding. The town lights glimmered below like a palace at the bottom of the sea. Faintly, he could hear children singing, whistling, shouting in fragments. The wind murmured in the distance. The grass stirred softly. His sweat-damp shirt grew cold against his skin. From the fields, he heard the sound of a train. Its small windows appeared in a row, tiny red points of light. Inside, he imagined travelers peeling apples, laughing, passing the time in many different ways. And suddenly, an indescribable sadness filled him. He raised his eyes once more to the sky. Yet no matter how long he looked, it did not seem like the empty, cold place the teacher had described. Instead, the more he gazed, the more it seemed like a vast field with small woods and pastures, like the earth itself. The blue lyre star shimmered, splitting into 3, into 4, flickering as though struck, its legs appearing and vanishing, until at last it stretched long, like a mushroom, and even the town below, just beneath his eyes, seemed no longer a town, but a hazy gathering of countless stars, like a single great cloud. Night on the Galactic Railroad. Chapter 6. The Galactic Station. Behind him, the pillar of the weather wheel had changed. It had taken on the faint outline of a triangular marker, flickering like a firefly, appearing, disappearing, then gradually growing clear. At last, it stood still, firm and upright, in the field of deep steel blue sky. Like a newly forged plate of blue steel, the sky stretched wide, and the pillar stood sharp and straight against it. Then, from somewhere, a strange voice echoed, "Galactic Station, Galactic Station." In an instant, the darkness burst into light. It was as though millions of glowing squid had been turned to crystal and cast into the sky, or as if a company of jewelers, pretending not to find diamonds, had suddenly overturned their hidden treasure, scattering gems everywhere. The air flashed brilliantly. Giovanni rubbed his eyes again and again. When he came to himself, he realized that all along, with a steady clatter, his small train had been running. Indeed, Giovanni was seated inside a small night railway carriage, lit by rows of little yellow lamps, looking out the window. The seats were covered in blue velvet and nearly empty. On the gray, varnished wall opposite, 2 large brass buttons glimmered faintly. In the seat before him, a tall boy, wearing a dark coat, black as though wet, leaned out the window. Something about the shape of his shoulders seemed familiar. The more Giovanni looked, the more he felt he must know who it was. Just as he leaned forward to look more closely, the boy drew his head back and turned. It was Campanella. Campanella, were you here from the beginning? Giovanni was about to ask, when Campanella said the others ran quite far, but they fell behind. Zanelli too. He ran hard, but he could not catch up. Yes, Giovanni thought. We set out together. Shall we wait for them somewhere? He asked. Zanelli has already gone home. His father came to fetch him. For some reason, as he spoke, Campanella's face looked slightly pale, as though he were in pain. Giovanni, too, felt a strange sensation, as if something important had been forgotten somewhere. He fell silent. Ah, I forgot my canteen and my sketchbook, but it doesn't matter. We'll soon reach Swan Station. I truly love seeing the swans, even if they fly far over the river. I am certain I can see them. Campanella held a round, disc-like map and turned it again and again. Upon its dark surface, black as night, a white band of the Milky Way stretched clearly. Along its left bank, a single railway line ran southward, farther and farther. The map was splendid. Each station, each triangular marker, each spring, each forest glowed in blue, orange, and green. Giovanni felt he had seen such a map somewhere before. Where did you get it? It looks like obsidian. At the Galactic Station. Didn't you receive one? Did we pass through the Galactic Station? Where are we now? Here, Giovanni pointed, just north of the mark labeled Swan. Yes. Oh, is that riverbank under moonlight? Looking there, along the pale, luminous shore of the Milky Way, silver pampas grass spread endlessly, rustling, shimmering like waves in the wind. It isn't moonlight, Giovanni said. It shines because it is the Milky Way. A sudden joy rose within him, so strong, he felt he might leap. He tapped his feet, leaned far out the window, and whistled high, the melody of star circling, stretching upward, trying with all his might to see clearly the waters of the Milky Way. At first, he could not, but gradually, as he looked more carefully, the water appeared clearer than glass, clearer than hydrogen, transparent beyond imagining. At times, depending on the angle of his eyes, it shimmered with faint violet ripples, or flashed like a sudden rainbow, flowing on, soundless, unceasing, across the plain, here and there, phosphorescent, triangular markers stood in beauty. The distant ones were small, the nearer ones large. Those far away glowed orange or yellow, sharp and bright. Those close by were bluish white, slightly blurred, some triangular, some square, some shaped like lightning or chains, shining everywhere across the field. Giovanni's heart beat wildly. He shook his head, and as he did, the blue and orange lights, the countless shining markers, seemed to tremble, to flicker, as though breathing together. "I have come," Giovanni whispered, "to the fields of heaven. And this train, it isn't burning coal," he added, leaning forward and peering ahead through the window. "Perhaps alcohol or electricity," said Campanella. Just then, as if in answer, from somewhere within the distant mist, a deep, cello-like voice resounded. "This train is not moved by steam or electricity. It moves because it is meant to move. You think you hear its wheels clattering, but that is only because you are accustomed to trains that make such sounds. I have heard that voice many times," Giovanni said. "So have I, in the woods and by the river," Campanella replied. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The small, beautiful train ran on through the wind-bent silver grass of the sky, through the waters of the Milky Way, through the pale glow of the triangular markers, ever onward, ever onward. Ah, gentian flowers are blooming. It is truly autumn now, Campanella said, pointing outside. Along the edge of the tracks bloomed gentians, a deep, astonishing violet, as though carved from moonstone. I could jump down, pick one, and leap back aboard, Giovanni said eagerly. "It's too late. They're already far behind," Campanella answered. Before he had finished speaking, another gentian, bright and full, flashed past, and then, one after another, cups of gentians, their yellow throats glowing, rose in abundance, like springs bursting, like rain, streaming before their eyes. The rows of triangular markers flared brighter still, as though smoking, as though burning, standing ever more luminous across the heavenly plain. Night on. The Galactic Railroad. Chapter 7. The Northern Cross and the Pliocene Shore. Will my mother forgive me? As though gathering his courage, his voice faltering slightly, followed by a small cough, Giovanni thought, "Ah, my mother too. She must be somewhere near that distant, dust-like orange marker, thinking of me now." He remained silent. If my mother could truly be happy, I would do anything. But what is it that would make her most happy? Campanella seemed to be holding back tears with all his strength. Your mother has nothing to suffer, Giovanni cried in surprise. I don't know, but if anyone does what is truly right, that must be the greatest happiness. So, I believe my mother will forgive me. Campanella spoke with a strange resolve. Suddenly, the carriage flashed white. Outside, upon the riverbed of the Milky Way, brighter than diamonds, brighter than dew, more splendid than anything, the water flowed without sound, without form. At its center, a pale blue radiance revealed an island. Upon the island's flat summit stood a magnificent white cross, as though cast from frozen polar cloud, crowned with a clear golden halo, standing quietly, eternally. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Voices rose from before and behind. Turning, they saw the passengers, each standing straight, robes falling neatly, some holding black Bibles to their chests, others clasping crystal rosaries, hands folded, praying toward the cross. Without thinking, Giovanni and Campanella rose to their feet. Campanella's cheeks shone like the bloom of a ripened apple. The island and the cross gradually drifted behind them across the opposite shore. A pale glow lingered. Silver grasses seemed to ripple in wind, flashing softly like breath upon glass. Gentians flickered among the grass like gentle foxfire. Soon crows of silver pampas obscured the view. The island of the swans appeared twice more in the distance, smaller each time, until it became like a painting and vanished. Behind Giovanni, he now noticed, though he did not know when she had boarded, a tall nun dressed in black, with a dark bundle beside her. Her round green eyes were lowered as though listening reverently to some lingering voice. The travelers returned quietly to their seats, the two boys filled with a new feeling, akin to sorrow, spoke softly, each in different words. "We'll soon arrive at Swan Station." "Yes, exactly at 11. Already, a green signal light and pale white pillars slid past the window. A dim lamp, like sulfur flame, glowed near the switch. The train slowed. Soon, a row of platform lamps appeared. Regular, beautiful, growing larger, wider, until they stopped before the great clock of Swan Station. Upon the clear autumn dial, two blue-tempered steel hands pointed precisely to 11. All at once, the passengers descended. The carriage fell empty. 20 minutes stop was written beneath the clock. "Shall we get off and look around?" "Let's." They leapt up together, rushed through the door, and ran toward the ticket gate. But there, only a single purple-tinted lamp burned. No one was there, no station master, no porter. They stepped outside into a small plaza surrounded by ginkgo trees that gleamed like crystal carvings. From the plaza, a wide road stretched straight ahead into the blue glow of the Milky Way. Those who had descended before them were nowhere to be seen. The two boys walked side by side along the white road, their shadows like pillars in a chamber with windows on every side, or like the spokes of two wheels spread outward again and again in every direction. Soon they reached the beautiful riverbank they had seen from the train. Campanella bent down, picked up a handful of the shining sand, spread it upon his palm, and let it rasp softly beneath his fingers. Dreamily he said, "All of this sand is crystal. There is a tiny fire burning inside." "Yes," Giovanni answered absently, thinking he had once learned something like that somewhere. The pebbles along the shore were all transparent, indeed crystal, topaz, and stones folded in wrinkled curves and corundum that sent a mist-like blue light from their edges. Giovanni ran to the water's edge and dipped his hand into the stream. The Milky Way's water, strange and luminous, was clearer than hydrogen itself, yet it flowed. He could tell, for where their wrists entered the current, they seemed to float slightly silver, and the ripples formed against them shone with beautiful phosphorescence, flickering like living flame. Looking upstream, they saw, beneath a cliff, thick with pampas grass, a white rock shelf, flat as a playground, stretching along the river. Upon it, 5 or 6 small figures stood, bending, rising, as though digging or burying something. Now and then, a tool flashed, "Let's go," they cried together, and ran toward them. At the entrance to the white rock shelf stood a smooth porcelain sign, Pliocene Shore. Along the opposite bank, thin iron railings had been set and wooden benches placed neatly. "Look, what's this?" Campanella stopped, puzzled, and picked up a black, jagged object, long and pointed, like a strange walnut. "It's a walnut. There are many of them. They haven't drifted here. They're embedded in the rock. This one is large, twice the size, and not damaged at all. Let's go see. They must be digging something." Holding the jagged black walnuts, the boys moved closer. To their left, waves glowed, like gentle lightning, rolling upon the shore. To their right, the cliff shimmered, as though fashioned from silver and shells, the pampas grass swaying. As they approached, they saw a tall man wearing thick spectacles and long boots, clearly a scholar, scribbling rapidly in a notebook, while 3 assistants lifted pickaxes and worked with shovels. He directed them eagerly, careful not to break that projection. "Use the shovel, the shovel. No, dig a little farther back. No, not like that. Why must you be so rough?" the scholar cried out. From within the soft white rock, a massive, pale blue skeleton had been exposed, as though the creature had fallen sideways and been crushed. More than half of it was already uncovered. Nearby, egg blocks of stone, each bearing the imprint of a cloven hoof, had been neatly cut, a dozen or so, square, numbered carefully. "Are you here to observe?" The scholar adjusted his glasses, which flashed sharply in the light. "You found many walnuts, didn't you? Those are from about 1,200,000 years ago. Quite recent, really. At that time, in the late Tertiary, this place was a coastline. Shells are found beneath. Where the river flows now, salt water once moved in and out, just the same. And this beast, we call it Boss. Careful there. No pickaxe. Use a chisel, gently. Boss, an ancestor of modern cattle. There were many of them once. Will it be made into a specimen? Giovanni asked. No, it is needed as proof. To us, this is a grand, thick stratum, evidence formed 1,200,000 years ago. But the question is, to those unlike us, would it appear the same, or would it seem like mere wind or water or empty air? Do you understand? Careful there. No shovel. There should be ribs just beneath that layer. The scholar hurried away, calling instructions. It's time. Let's go, Campanella said, glancing between his map and his watch. Yes. We must excuse ourselves, Giovanni said politely, bowing. I see. Farewell. The scholar was already moving, busy once more. The two boys ran across the white rock, determined not to miss the train. And truly, they ran like the wind. Their breath did not shorten. Their knees did not burn. If we can run like this, we could run across the whole world, Giovanni thought. They passed again along the riverbank, and soon the purple-lit gate grew larger. Moments later, they were seated once more in their original carriage, looking back through the window at the place they had just left. Chapter 8. The Birdcatcher. May I hurry through here? A rough yet kindly adult voice spoke from behind them, turning as they saw a short man with a red beard, wearing a worn brown coat. 2 white cloth bundles were slung over his shoulders. Yes, of course, Giovanni replied, drawing his shoulders in slightly as he bowed. The man smiled faintly within his beard and lifted the bundles carefully onto the luggage rack. For some reason, Giovanni felt a sudden loneliness, a quiet sadness. He stared silently at the clock ahead. From far down the carriage, something like a glass whistle sounded. The train was already moving. Softly, Campanella gazed up at the ceiling. A black beetle had settled upon one of the lamps, its shadow enlarged against the roof. The red-bearded man watched the boys with a nostalgic smile. The train gathered speed. Silver grass and river flashed alternately past the window. After a moment, the man asked, a little hesitantly, "Where are you two headed?" "Anywhere," Giovanni answered, a little awkwardly. "That's fine. This train truly goes anywhere. And you, where are you going?" Campanella asked suddenly, almost challengingly. Giovanni couldn't help laughing. Across the aisle, recommend wearing a pointed hat with a large key at his waist, glanced over and smiled. Campanella blushed and laughed as well. The red-bearded man, unoffended, his cheek twitching slightly, replied, "I get off, just ahead. I make my living catching birds." "What kind of birds?" "Cranes, geese, herons, even swans." "Are there many cranes?" "Plenty. They've been calling for some time. Didn't you hear them?" "No. You can hear them even now. Listen closely." The boys raised their heads and strained their ears. Between the steady rumble of the train and the wind in the grass, they heard a sound like water bubbling round and clear. "How do you catch herons?" Herons, you say? Or cranes? Herons, Giovanni replied, not caring which. Well, it's simple. Herons are formed from the sand of the Milky Way, condensed into shape, and they always return to the river. So you wait on the bank. When they descend, stretching their legs like this, before their feet touch the ground, you press them down. At once, they settle, become still, and die in peace. After that, well, you know the rest. You press them like leaves. You press them as specimens. Not specimens. People eat them, don't they? That's strange. Campanella tilted his head. Strange? Not at all. Here. The man stood, reached up to the rack, and quickly untied one of the bundles. Take a look. Just caught them. They really are herons, the boys cried out. There lay about a dozen white bodies shining like the Northern Cross, flattened slightly, their black legs folded, arranged like delicate relief carvings. They're closing their eyes, Campanella murmured, touching gently the crescent-shaped white eyelid with his finger. Even the spear-like plumes upon their heads remained intact. You see? The bird-catcher said, folding the cloth again, wrapping it neatly, tying the cord. Who would eat herons here? Giovanni wondered and asked aloud, Are herons good to eat? Oh yes, orders come every day. But geese sell better shape, and less trouble. Look, he opened the second bundle. Inside were geese, yellow and pale blue, mottled, glowing faintly. Like small lamps, they too lay, flattened slightly, beaks aligned. These can be eaten at once. Would you care for a taste? He pulled lightly at one yellow goose's leg. It came away cleanly, as though made of chocolate. Go on. Try some. Giovanni tasted it. It is candy, of course, sweeter than chocolate. Geese don't fly like this. This man must be a confectioner from some field nearby. And yet, it feels wrong to mock him silently while eating his sweets. He continued chewing. Have some more, the bird-catcher urged. Though Giovanni longed for another bite, he replied, Thank you. That's enough. The man then offered some to the key-bearing passenger. Oh no, I shouldn't take your merchandise, the man said, removing his hat. Not at all. So, how are the migratory birds this season? Magnificent. Just the other evening, second watch, complaints came from every direction, asking why the lighthouse was blinking irregularly. But it wasn't us. The migrating birds clustered thick and black, passing before the light. "What can we do?" I told them. "Don't bring such complaints to me. Take them to that tall fellow with the long legs and that flapping cloak." Ha ha. The silver grass thinned away and bright light suddenly poured in from the open plain. "Why are herons more troublesome?" Campanella asked at last. "Well, to eat herons." The bird catcher turned back. "You must hang them in the Milky Way's water light for 10 days, or else bury them in sand for 3 or 4. That lets the mercury evaporate, then they're fit to eat. They aren't birds, they're just sweets, aren't they?" Campanella said boldly, as though he had decided to ask. The bird catcher seemed startled. "Yes, yes. This is my stop," he said hurriedly. He stood, took his bundles, and vanished. Where did he go? The boys looked at one another. The lighthouse keeper, still smiling, rose slightly and peered out the window beside them. The boys looked out the window. There, upon the wide river bank, covered with glowing, phosphorescent sand, stood the bird catcher. Yellow and pale blue light shimmered across the plain. He stood solemnly, arms spread wide, gazing steadily upward. He's gone there. Strange fellow. He must be catching birds again. I hope they descend before the train moves on. At that very moment, from the vast empty sky, colored like deep violet bellflower, herons began to fall, as though snow were descending, crying harshly. They swirled down in great numbers. The bird catcher, clearly satisfied, planted his feet wide, firmly at 60 degrees, and seized, one after another, the black legs of the birds as they descended, dropping them swiftly into a cloth sack. Inside, the herons flickered like fireflies, glowing blue, fading, glowing again, until at last they turned pale white and closed their eyes. Yet more birds landed safely upon the sand, then were caught. Watching closely, the moment their feet touched the ground, they shrank, flattened, like melting snow, spreading across the sand, like molten copper from a furnace. For a moment, the outline of a bird remained upon the ground, brightening, dimming 2 or 3 times before blending entirely with the surrounding sand. After filling his sack with perhaps 20 birds, the bird catcher suddenly raised both arms, like a soldier struck by a bullet, and collapsed. In the next instant, he was gone. Instead, a familiar voice sounded beside Giovanni. "Ah, that feels better. There's nothing quite so good as earning just enough to fit one's body. The boys turned. The bird catcher was there again, neatly stacking the herons, one atop another. How did you come from there to here all at once? Giovanni asked, half expecting the answer, half not. How? I wished to come, so I came. And you, where have you come from? Giovanni tried to answer, but no matter how hard he searched, he could not remember where they had come from. Campanella's face flushed red as he struggled to recall. Ah. From far away, the bird catcher nodded easily, as though he understood. Night on the Galactic Railroad. Chapter 9. Giovanni's Ticket. We are now leaving the Swan District. Look, that is the famous Albareo Observatory. Outside the window, in the very center of the Milky Way, which shimmered like a sky filled with fireworks, stood 4 large, dark buildings. Upon the flat roof of one of them, 2 immense, transparent spheres, one sapphire, one topaz, revolved quietly in a ring. The yellow sphere moved gradually away, while the smaller blue one approached. Soon their edges overlapped, forming a perfect green double convex lens. The center swelled until the blue sphere came fully before the topaz, creating a green core encircled by a golden ring. Then they parted again, reversing their form, the sapphire drifting back, the yellow advancing, returning at last to their former positions. Surrounded by the soundless, shapeless waters of the galaxy, the black observatory lay still as though asleep. That device measures the velocity of the water. Even the water, the bird catcher began. Tickets, please. A tall conductor in a red cap stood beside them. The bird catcher silently produced a small slip of paper. The conductor glanced at it, then extended his hand toward Giovanni and Campanella. Giovanni hesitated. Campanella calmly produced a small, gray ticket. Giovanni, flustered, reached into his coat pocket. His fingers touched a folded paper, larger than he expected. He pulled it out. It was a green sheet, about the size of a postcard, folded into 4. Had this been here before? Unsure. Yet with no time to think, he handed it over. The conductor straightened, opened it carefully, and read. As he did, he adjusted his buttons and collar. The lighthouse keeper leaned forward to examine it closely. Giovanni felt a warmth rise in his chest. Surely it must be some kind of certificate. Was this obtained from the 3rd dimension? The conductor asked. I'm not sure. Giovanni replied, now confident enough to smile. Very well, we shall reach the Southern Cross around the 3rd hour. He returned the paper and moved on. Campanella leaned in eagerly. Giovanni too longed to see it clearly, but the paper was strange, covered in black arabesque-like patterns, within which were printed about a dozen curious characters. Staring at it, one felt as though being drawn inside. The bird-catcher glanced at it and started. Well now, that's something remarkable. That's a pass to the true heavens, not merely the heavens, a permit to travel anywhere at will. With that, this incomplete, illusory, fourth-dimensional Galactic Railroad will take you as far as you wish. You two are quite extraordinary. I don't understand it, Giovanni said, blushing, folding the paper again and slipping it away. Feeling awkward, he and Campanella turned once more toward the window. Yet he sensed, from time to time, the bird-catcher glancing at him, as though thinking, quite remarkable indeed. We'll soon reach Eagle Station, Campanella said, glancing between the map and the 3 pale blue triangular markers lined up along the far shore. For reasons he could not explain, Giovanni was suddenly overcome with pity for the bird-catcher. The way he had rejoiced at catching the herons, the way he wrapped them carefully in white cloth, the way he had stared in astonishment at Giovanni's ticket, then hastily praised it, thinking of these things one by one. Giovanni felt that he wanted to give him whatever he possessed, food, anything at all. If it would make that man truly happy, Giovanni felt he could stand upon the shining riverbank of the Milky Way for 100 years, catching birds in his place. He could no longer remain silent. He almost turned to ask, "What is it you truly desire?" But that seemed too abrupt. So he turned instead and saw the bird-catcher was gone. The white bundles were gone as well. Perhaps he had stepped outside again, bracing his feet, looking up to catch herons, Giovanni thought. But outside there was only a vast expanse of luminous sand and waves of white pampas grass. No broad back, no pointed hat. Where has he gone? Where indeed? Where will we meet him again? Why didn't I say something to him? Giovanni said. I felt as though he were in the way, and that makes it worse. He had never felt such a strange emotion before, never spoken such words. There's a scent of apples, Campanella said suddenly, looking around. Perhaps I thought of apples and imagined it. No, it truly smells of apples, and wild roses too. Giovanni glanced about. The fragrance seemed to enter from the window. but it was autumn. Wild roses should not bloom. Then, suddenly, there stood a small boy, about 6 years old, with glossy black hair, his red jacket unbuttoned, barefoot, shivering, his face filled with astonishment. Beside him, a tall young man in a black suit stood firmly, like a tree bent by wind, holding the boy's hand. Behind the young man, a girl, perhaps 12, with gentle brown eyes, wearing a black coat, clung to his arm and gazed out the window, wide-eyed. "Oh, where are we? How beautiful," she whispered. "Oh, this is Lancashire. No, Connecticut. No, we have come to the sky. We are going to heaven. Look, that sign is a heavenly sign. There is nothing to fear now. We are being called by God." The young man in black spoke brightly to the girl, yet for some reason deep lines marked his brow. He looked terribly tired, forcing a smile as he gently seated the small boy beside Giovanni. Then he indicated the seat beside Campanella for the girl. She obeyed quietly and folded her hands neatly. "I'm going to my sister," the little boy said, his face strangely tense, to the young man who had just taken a seat across the aisle. The young man gazed at the boy's damp, curled hair with a sorrowful expression. The girl suddenly covered her face with both hands and began to sob. Father and Sister Kiku still have many duties, but they will follow soon. And Mother, how long she must have waited. She must be wondering, what song is my dear Tadashi singing now? Is he holding hands with the others on a snowy morning, running in circles around the garden and the bushes? She has been waiting and worrying for us, so let us go quickly and meet her. Yes, but I wish I had not boarded the ship, the boy whispered. Yes, but look at the sky, look at that splendid river. Do you see? All through the summer, when we sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," before going to bed, it always appeared faint and white outside the window. That is the very place. Isn't it beautiful? See how it shines. The sister wiped her eyes with a handkerchief and looked outside. The young man spoke again, gently, as if teaching. We have nothing more to grieve. We are traveling through such a beautiful place, and soon we shall be with God. There, it is truly bright, fragrant, filled with noble people, and those who took our places in the boats, they must all have been saved and returned safely to their fathers and mothers, to their homes. So now, since it is almost time, let us be brave and sing cheerfully as we go. He stroked the boy's wet-looking black hair As he comforted them, his own face gradually grew brighter. And you, where have you come from? What has happened? The lighthouse keeper asked, as though he had finally understood. The young man smiled faintly. Our ship struck an iceberg and sank. Their father had urgent business and returned home. 2 months earlier, we departed later. I was attending university and had been employed as their tutor. It was the 12th day, today or yesterday, when the ship struck the iceberg, tilted at once, and began to sink. There was moonlight, faint, blurred somewhere, but the fog was very deep. The boats on the port side were already useless. There was no room for everyone. The ship was sinking. I cried out desperately. Please let the little ones board first. Those nearby made way at once and prayed for the children. Yet between us and the lifeboat, there were still many small children, parents, others, and I did not have the courage to push them aside. And yet, I believed it was my duty to save these two. So I tried to press forward. But then, I thought perhaps that, rather than forcing them into safety, it might be their true happiness to go together into God's presence. Then again, I resolved to bear the sin myself, to defy even God if necessary, and save them at any cost. Yet, when I looked around, I could not do it. To send children into boats filled only with children, to watch mothers kiss them wildly from shore, to see fathers stand upright, enduring unbearable grief. It was like my heart being torn apart. The ship sank, little by little. We gathered close, fully prepared. I held these two tightly and waited to float, if we could, as the ship went down. Someone threw a life vest, but it slipped away, far beyond reach. I grasped desperately at a lattice in the deck, and we three clung to it together. From somewhere, a voice cried out, 306. At once, everyone began singing in many different languages, all at once. Then there was a great sound. We fell into the water. I thought we had entered the whirlpool. I held them tightly. There was a blur, and then we were here. Their mother passed away 2 years ago. Yes, the boats must surely have been saved. Experienced sailors were rowing swiftly away from the ship. From somewhere nearby, soft sighs and whispered prayers could be heard. Giovanni and Campanella, remembering many things they had long forgotten, felt their eyes grow warm. Ah, was not that vast sea called the Pacific? In that northern ocean where icebergs drift, someone rides a small vessel, fighting wind-freezing spray and bitter cold, working desperately. I feel such pity for him and such shame. What can I possibly do for his happiness? Giovanni lowered his head and sank into silence. We do not always know what happiness is, the lighthouse keeper said gently. But even hardships, if they are encountered while walking the right path, each ascent and descent of the mountain pass is a step closer to true happiness. Yes, the young man replied quietly. To reach the highest happiness, one must accept many sorrows as well. The brother and sister had grown weary. They leaned against their seats, asleep. The boy's bare feet, which had been bare, now wore soft, white shoes. Clatter, clatter, the train moved on along the shore of the radiant, phosphorescent river. Looking through the opposite window, the plane resembled a magic lantern display. Hundreds, thousands of triangular markers of various sizes. Upon the larger ones, survey flags dotted in red. At the far edge of the field, they gathered thickly, forming a pale blue mist. From there, or perhaps beyond, shapes like faint signal fires rose, one after another, into the clear, bellflower-colored sky. The transparent air was filled with the fragrance of roses. How is it you have never seen apples like these before? Have you? The lighthouse keeper held upon his lap a great apple brilliantly colored in gold and crimson, careful not to drop it. Oh, where do these come from? How splendid they are. Do apples like this grow here? The young man seemed truly astonished. He gazed, forgetting himself, at the single apple resting in the lighthouse keeper's hands, tilting his head, narrowing his eyes, as if studying a rare treasure. Please, do take one. By all means, take one, the lighthouse keeper said gently. The young man picked one up and glanced toward Giovanni and Campanella. Here, young gentleman. Would you care for one? Giovanni, having been called young gentleman, felt slightly offended and remained silent. But Campanella said, "Thank you." So the young man himself passed one apple to each of them. Giovanni rose and said quietly, "Thank you." Now that his arms were free, the lighthouse keeper placed an apple gently upon the knees of the sleeping brother and sister. "Thank you very much. Where are such apples grown?" the young man asked, examining it carefully. "In this region, of course, we cultivate crops," the lighthouse keeper replied. "But most things grow almost by themselves. Farming is not so difficult. If one sows the seed one truly desires, it will flourish on its own. Even rice, unlike that of the Pacific region, has no husk, is 10 times larger, and carries a finer fragrance. But in the place where you are going, there is no agriculture. Apples, sweets, none of them remain. Everything becomes a faint, good fragrance, unique to each person, and scatters. Suddenly, the boy opened his eyes wide. Oh, I was dreaming of Mother just now. She was in a room with beautiful cabinets and many books. She looked at me, held out her hands, and smiled and smiled. I said, "Mother, shall I pick up an apple for you?" And then I woke up. Ah, we're still on the train, aren't we? The apple is right here, the young man said gently. This gentleman gave it to us. Thank you, sir. Oh, sister is still asleep. I'll wake her. Sister, look, we've been given apples. Wake up. The sister smiled and opened her eyes. Shielding them from the light, she looked at the apple. The boy began eating, as though it were pie. Even the carefully peeled skin, which curled like a corkscrew as it fell, turned softly gray and vanished before it touched the floor. The two of them tucked their apples carefully into their pockets. On the far bank downstream, a great forest stood deep and blue. Upon its branches, round fruits shone crimson and ripe. In the center of the grove rose a tall triangular marker. From within the forest, mingled with orchestral bells and xylophone tones, a music beyond description flowed upon the wind, melting, seeping into the air. The young man shuddered slightly. As they listened silently to the music, it seemed as though a wide field, yellow, pale green, spread everywhere around them, like a luminous meadow or a vast woven carpet. It felt as if white, waxen dew were gliding across the face of the sun. "Look, a crow!" cried the girl called Kaori, who sat beside Campanella. "Not crows. They're all magpies," Campanella replied, almost scolding without meaning to. Giovanni laughed despite himself, and the girl grew embarrassed. Indeed, upon the pale blue radiance of the riverbank, countless black birds stood in rows, receiving the faint glow of the river. Yes, magpies, the young man added gently, as if to smooth the moment. You can tell by the feathers standing sharply at the back of their heads. The triangular marker in the blue forest ahead had now come directly before the train. At that moment, from far toward the rear of the cars, the familiar melody of hymn 306 began to drift forward. It sounded as though many voices were singing together. The young man's face suddenly turned pale. He half rose, as if to go toward the sound, but then sat down again. The girl called Kaori pressed her handkerchief to her face. Even Giovanni felt his nose sting. No one knew who began it, yet before long the hymn rose again, clearer, stronger. Without thinking, Giovanni and Campanella joined in the singing. The blue olive forest shone deeply beyond the unseen Milky Way, and gradually receded behind them. The strange instrumental tones flowing from it were worn away by the rhythm of the train and the wind fading into distance. Oh, there are peacocks. Look, peacocks. That must be the Inn of Lyra in that forest, the girl said dreamily. I imagine great musicians of old gathered there, and around them many blue peacocks. Yes, she added softly, there were many. Giovanni saw upon the forest, now no larger than a green shell button, a pale flash of light as peacocks opened and closed their tails. I heard their cries earlier too, Campanella said. Yes, at least 30 of them, the girl replied. Suddenly, Giovanni felt an indescribable sadness. He almost turned to Campanella with a troubled face and said, Let's get off here and stay. But at that moment, he saw something strange far downstream. It was surely a black, smooth, slender shape rising from the unseen waters of the Milky Way, arching like a bow, and then disappearing beneath the surface. Thinking it odd, he watched carefully again, and this time it happened much nearer. Before long, here and there, those strange, black, smooth shapes leapt from the water. They arched in the air, rounded in flight, then plunged head first back beneath the surface. There were many, they seemed, like fish to be swimming upstream. What are they? Ta-chan, look, there are so many. What can they be? The sleepy boy rubbed his eyes and sprang up in surprise. What are they? The young man rose as well. What curious fish? What are they? They're dolphins, Campanella said, still watching the river. Dolphins? I've never seen one, but this isn't the sea, is it? Dolphins are not confined to the sea, said that mysterious low voice again, from somewhere unseen. Indeed, the dolphins looked strange. They rose from the water with their two fins held stiffly at their sides, like arms lowered in perfect stillness. Then, as if proudly bowing, they plunged again, head downward, without changing posture. Each time they rose, the unseen waters of the Milky Way wavered like blue flame. Are dolphins fish? The girl asked Campanella. The boy, now exhausted, had slumped back into sleep. "No, they are not fish," Campanella answered. "They are mammals, like whales." "You've seen a whale?" "Yes, only its head and black tail, but when it blows, it looks just like in the books." "Whales must be very large." "They are. Even a young whale is as big as a dolphin." "Yes, I read about them in the Arabian Nights," the sister said, turning the thin silver ring on her finger, amused. "Campanella, I'll go on ahead. I've never even seen a whale." Giovanni thought this with a restless ache. He felt almost unable to endure it, yet he clenched his lips tightly and kept his gaze fixed on the window. Outside, the dolphins were gone. The river divided into two. In the center of the dark island, between them, stood a tall signal tower. Atop it, a man in loose clothing and a red cap looked upward, holding a red flag in one hand, a blue flag in the other. While Giovanni watched, the man waved the red flag repeatedly. Then suddenly, he lowered it and raised the blue flag high, higher, waving it fiercely like the conductor of an orchestra. At once, a roused sound like sudden rain filled the air. Dark shapes, in cluster after cluster, shot across to the far side of the river like bullets. Giovanni leaned halfway out the window and looked up. Beneath the beautiful, bellflower-colored sky, tens of thousands of small birds, group after group, passed overhead, crying busily as they flew. "The birds are crossing," Giovanni said, leaning out the window. At that moment, the man atop the tower, dressed in loose garments, suddenly raised the red flag and waved it wildly. At once, the flock ceased passing. At the same instant, a sound like something crushed echoed downstream. Then silence. Then again, the signalman in the red cap raised the blue flag and shouted, "Now, cross. Cross now, migrating birds." His voice was clear, and again tens of thousands of birds rushed straight across the sky. From the middle window, where the two boys leaned out, the girl extended her face, her beautiful cheeks shining as she looked up. So many birds, and how beautiful the sky is, she said to Giovanni. But Giovanni, feeling irritated, feeling she was somehow presumptuous, kept his mouth closed and stared upward in silence. The girl gave a small sigh and returned quietly to her seat. Campanella, as if troubled, drew back from the window and looked at the map. "Is that man instructing the birds?" the girl asked softly. "He's signaling to the migrating flocks," Campanella replied, somewhat uncertain. Perhaps it's connected to some beacon elsewhere. The carriage grew quiet. Giovanni wanted to pull his head back inside, but he could not bear to face the brightness within. So he remained standing, enduring it, whistling softly. Why am I so sad? I must hold my heart larger, cleaner. Far beyond the opposite shore, I see a small blue flame, like smoke. It is truly still and cold. I will look at it carefully and calm myself. Giovanni pressed his aching head between his hands and gazed toward it. Is there no one at all, who will go with me to the very end? Even Campanella is talking happily with that girl. How painful this is. His eyes filled again with tears. Even the Milky Way seemed distant, a faint white blur. Then the train gradually left the river and began running along the top of a cliff. On the opposite side, dark cliffs rose higher and higher as the river flowed downstream. He glimpsed a great stalk of corn, its leaves curled tightly, and beneath them large green husks showed hints of red silk and pearl-like kernels. Soon there were many, then rows of them, lining the space between cliff and track. And when Giovanni withdrew from one window and looked out the other, the vast plain of the sky was filled to the far horizon with towering cornfields, their splendid curled leaves shimmering in the wind. From their tips, dew clung thickly, like diamonds that had absorbed all the sunlight of day, glowing red, green, and bright as flame. This is corn, isn't it? Campanella said to Giovanni, but Giovanni's mood would not lift. Still staring at the field, he answered bluntly, I suppose so. The train gradually slowed, passing several signals and switching lights. It came to a stop at small station. The pale blue clock at the front clearly marked the second hour. The wind had ceased. The train stood still. In the silent plain, the pendulum ticked, precise, unwavering, and in the pauses between its strokes, from far, far beyond the edge of the field, a faint melody threaded its way through the air like a filament of light. The New World Symphony, the sister murmured softly, almost to herself. Inside the carriage, the tall young man in black and the others seemed to be dreaming, gentle dreams. Why can I not be happy in such a quiet, beautiful place? Why do I feel so utterly alone? Even Campanella, though we are riding together, speaks only with that girl. How painful this is. Giovanni covered half his face with his hand and stared out the opposite window. A clear, glass-like whistle sounded. The train moved again, quietly. Campanella, still seeming lonely, whistled softly, the tune of the stars. Yes, yes, this is a severe plateau, someone said behind them. Two older voices conversed briskly. as if newly awakened. Corn won't grow here unless you bore holes 2 feet deep with a pole before sowing. I see. The river must be far below. Yes, 2,000, even 6,000 feet down. It's become a tremendous canyon. Colorado Plateau. Wasn't this the Colorado Plateau? Giovanni found himself thinking so. The sister had drawn her brother close against her breast, letting him sleep. Her dark eyes were cast far away, gazing without seeing. Campanella still whistled softly, alone. The boy's face, like an apple wrapped in silk, turned toward Giovanni. Suddenly, the corn vanished. A vast black plain opened wide. The New World Symphony rose more clearly from the edge of the horizon. Across that dark expanse, an Indian appeared, white feathers bound to his head, arms and chest adorned with stones. With a small bow drawn, he ran straight after the train. Look, an Indian. Sister, look. The young man in black awoke. Giovanni and Campanella both stood. He's running. He's chasing us. No, he isn't chasing the train. He must be hunting or dancing. The young man spoke as if he had forgotten where he was. Indeed, the Indian seemed half in dance. Even in running, his steps were not efficient, as if not fully committed. Suddenly, the white feather upon his head tilted forward. He stopped short. In one swift motion, he drew his bow upward into the sky. A crane faltered, then fell, and dropped into his wide outstretched arms. The Indian stood, smiling, pleased. Then, holding the crane, his figure grew smaller, farther, until it vanished. Telegraph poles flashed past. 2 insulators glittered briefly, and once more the fields of corn returned. Looking out the nearer window, Giovanni saw the train was running along a very high cliff. At the bottom of the valley, the river flowed again, broad, bright, and silent. Yes, from here the descent begins. This time we go straight down to the very surface of the water. It's no small matter. Because of the grade, the train can never come from that side to this one. Look, we're already gaining speed, said the elderly voice from behind. Faster, faster. Whenever the track clung to the edge of the cliff, the bright river could be seen far below. Giovanni felt his spirits rising. When they passed, a small hut and a lone child stood before it. Gazing toward the train, he cried out involuntarily, "Oh!" Faster still, the passengers leaned backward, gripping their seats as the car pitched forward. Giovanni laughed with Campanella. The Milky Way now ran close beside them, flashing as it rushed. Pale red riverbanks were dotted with pink dianthus blossoms. At last, the train steadied and slowed. On both banks, flags stood, marked with a star and a pickaxe. "What flag is that?" Giovanni asked. "I don't know. It isn't on the map. There's an iron boat down there." "Ah, perhaps they're building a bridge," the girl suggested. "Yes, that must be the engineer's flag. They're conducting bridge drills, but I don't see any soldiers." Just then, near the far bank downstream, the unseen water of the Milky Way flashed brilliantly, leaping upward, like a pillar, with a thunderous sound. "Blasting! Blasting!" Campanella cried, leaping in excitement. The column of water vanished. Great salmon and trout, their white bellies shining, were flung into the air, tracing bright arcs before falling back into the river. Giovanni felt so light he could almost leap the sky's engineering corps. "Look at that. The trout are flying like this. I've never taken such a splendid journey. If we saw them up close, they'd be this big," Campanella said, measuring with his hands. "There must be countless fish in that water. Are there small fish too?" the girl asked, drawn into the excitement. "Of course, if there are large ones, there must be small ones too, but they're too far away to see," Giovanni answered, now entirely cheerful, smiling at her. "Look, that must be the shrine of the twin stars," the boy suddenly shouted, pointing out the window. On a low hill to the right, two tiny shrines, as if carved from crystal, stood side by side. "What's the shrine of the twin stars?" My mother told me about it many times. They're two little crystal shrines right next to each other, so it must be that. Tell us, what did the twin stars do? "I know. They went out to play in the fields and quarreled with a crow, didn't they?" "That's not it at all," my mother said. "On the bank of the Milky Way, and then a comet came, whistling, Gijifu, Gijifu." "Oh, Tachan, that's a different story." "Then are they up there now, playing the flute?" "No, they've already come back from the sea." Yes, yes, I know the story. I'll tell it." At that moment, the opposite bank of the river suddenly turned red. The willows and other trees were outlined in deep black, and the unseen waves of the Milky Way flickered now and then, sharp and red, like needles of light. On the far bank, a great crimson fire was burning. Its black smoke rose high, as if it might scorch even the cool, bellflower-colored sky, more transparent than ruby, more intoxicating than lithium flame. The fire burned, radiant and pure. What kind of fire is that? What could burn so red? Giovanni asked. It's the scorpion's fire, Campanella answered, consulting his map. Oh, I know about that, said the girl softly. What's the scorpion's fire? Giovanni asked. The scorpion burned and died, and its fire still burns. That's what my father told me many times. A scorpion. That's an insect, isn't it? But it was a good insect. Scorpions aren't good. I saw one in a museum, preserved in alcohol. It had a hook on its tail. The teacher said its sting could kill. Yes, but it was good. My father told me this. Long ago, on the plain of Baldera, there lived a scorpion. It killed small insects and lived by eating them. One day, a weasel discovered it and tried to devour it. The scorpion fled desperately, but at last, it was cornered. Just then, there was a well before it, and it fell inside. It could not climb out. As it began to drown, the scorpion prayed, "Ah, I do not know how many lives I have taken, and yet, when my own life was threatened, I struggled so desperately to escape. Now I am lost. Nothing can be trusted. Why did I not offer my body quietly to the weasel? Then the weasel might have lived one more day. Oh God, look into my heart. Instead of casting away this life in vain, let my body next time be used for the true happiness of all." So it prayed, and then the scorpion saw its body become a beautiful crimson flame, burning in the darkness, lighting the night. My father said, "It still burns. That must be it, that fire there. Yes, look." Campanella said, "The triangular markers, they form the shape of a scorpion." Giovanni looked carefully. Beyond the great red fire, 3 markers stretched forward like the scorpion's arms, and 5 more curved behind like its tail, and hooked sting. And truly, the beautiful crimson scorpion fire burned, silent, bright, brighter still. As the crimson fire receded behind them, a strange liveliness began to gather in the air, music of many kinds, like the scent of flowers, whistles, murmuring voices, as though a town lay nearby, holding some great festival. "Let the centaur's dew fall," suddenly cried the boy beside Giovanni, who had just awakened, gazing out the opposite window. There stood a deep blue fir like a Christmas tree. Within it, countless tiny lights glowed as if 1,000 fireflies had gathered among its branches. "Ah, tonight is the Centaur Festival," someone said. "Yes, this is the village of the Centaur," Campanella answered at once. "And if it's a ball toss, I never miss the boy boasted proudly. We'll arrive at the Southern Cross soon. Please prepare to disembark, the young man announced. I'm staying on the train a little longer, the boy protested. The girl beside Campanella rose restlessly to prepare, yet she looked unwilling to part from Giovanni and the others. We must get off here, the young man said firmly, looking down at the boy. No, I'll ride a little longer. Giovanni burst out, unable to restrain himself. Come with us. We have tickets that let us travel anywhere. But we must get off here. This is where we go to heaven, the girl said softly. There's no need to go to heaven, my teacher said. We must make a place even better than heaven. Right here. Mother is there, and God calls us. That God is a false God. Your God is the false one. No. What kind of God is yours? The young man asked, smiling gently. I don't really know, but not like that. The one true, only one real God. The true God is of course only one, the young man replied. No, not like that. The one true God. That is exactly so. We pray that one day before that true God we shall meet you again, the young man said, joining his hands quietly. The girl did the same. All of them looked as though they hated to part. Their faces had grown faintly pale. Giovanni nearly cried out. Now, are you ready? We shall soon reach the Southern Cross. And then it appeared, far downstream along the unseen Milky Way, a cross studded with blue, orange, and every kind of light rose from the river like a single tree, radiant, and above it a pale ring of cloud hung like a halo. A murmur spread through the train. Just as at the Northern Cross, everyone stood upright and began to pray. Here and there rose cries of joy, like children leaping at gourds, and sounds of sorrow too deep for words. Gradually, the cross moved to the center of the window, the pale blue ring of cloud, like the flesh of an apple, turned slowly above it. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Bright and joyful, their voices rang out. From far, from the cold, distant sky, came the clear, refreshing sound of trumpets. Through many signals and lamps, the train slowed, and at last came to a complete stop directly before the cross. Now we must disembark, said the young man, taking the boy's hand. The sister straightened his collar and adjusted her own shoulders, and together they began walking toward the exit. Well then, goodbye, the girl said, turning back toward them. Goodbye, Giovanni replied, forcing the word out roughly as he struggled not to cry. The girl looked back once more, her eyes wide with pain, and then she went out silently. The carriage was now more than half empty. Suddenly it felt vast, hollow, and wind poured in. Watching, the two boys saw all the others kneel reverently upon the shore of the Milky Way, before the cross, and across the unseen water, a majestic white figure extended its hand and came toward them. But at that moment, the clear glass whistle sounded. The train began to move. Before they knew it, a silver mist flowed upstream, and everything was hidden. Only chestnut trees stood shining in the haze, their leaves glimmering, and small electric squirrels peered playfully from within the mist. Then the fog thinned, a road appeared, lined with small lamps, like a path leading somewhere far away. It ran beside the tracks for a time, and whenever the train passed a marker, the small amber lights winked out briefly, as if bowing, then lit again after the boys had passed. When Giovanni turned to look back, the cross had grown small, so small it seemed it might hang upon one's chest. Whether the girl and the young man still knelt upon the white shore, or had already gone to some unknown heaven, he could no longer tell. Giovanni drew a deep breath. Campanella, we're alone again. Let's go on, together, as far as it goes. If it means the happiness of everyone, I would not mind being burned 100 times. Like the scorpion, yes, so would I. Tears shone in Campanella's eyes. But what is true happiness, after all? Giovanni asked. I don't know, Campanella replied vaguely. Let's do our best, Giovanni said, drawing a long breath as though new strength were rising within him. Ah, there is the coal sack. Look, that dark hollow, Campanella said, shifting slightly aside and pointing to one part of the Milky Way. Giovanni looked and started. In one portion of the Milky Way there yawned a vast, dark chasm. No matter how he strained his eyes, no matter how he rubbed them, he could see nothing within it. Only a deep, piercing ache filled his sight. I'm not afraid of such darkness anymore, Giovanni said. I'll search for the true happiness of everyone. Let's go on, together, as far as it goes. Yes, we will. Ah, how beautiful that meadow is. Everyone is gathered there. That must be the true heaven. Ah, there, that is my mother. Suddenly, Campanella pointed toward a bright plain, far beyond the window. Giovanni looked, but all he saw was a pale white haze. He could not see what Campanella saw. A strange loneliness filled him. As he gazed blankly outward, he noticed 2 telegraph poles on the far bank, their crossbars joined. like outstretched arms. Campanella, let's go on together, Giovanni said, turning back. But the seat where Campanella had been sitting was empty. Only his dark jacket remained faintly shining. Giovanni sprang to his feet like a bullet, leaning out the window so no one could hear. He struck his chest violently and cried out, then burst into tears. It seemed as though everything had suddenly gone dark. Then, why are you crying? Look this way. That gentle, cello-like voice he had heard before spoke behind him. Giovanni started, wiped away his tears, and turned. In the seat where Campanella had been, there now sat a pale, thin man wearing a large black hat, holding a great book, smiling kindly. Your friend has gone somewhere. He has truly gone far away tonight. There is no use searching for him now. Why? We said we would go straight on together. Yes, everyone thinks so, yet they cannot go together. And everyone is Campanella. Every person you meet has ridden the train with you many times, eaten apples with you. So, as you thought before, seek the greatest happiness for all. Go there quickly, together with everyone. There, only there. You may truly go on with Campanella forever. Yes, I will. But how shall I seek it? I too am seeking it. Hold your ticket firmly and study with all your heart. You have learned chemistry. You know that water is made of oxygen and hydrogen. No one now doubts that. When you experiment, you discover that it is truly so. Yet long ago, people said water was made of mercury and salt, or of mercury and sulfur. There were many arguments. Everyone says their own God is the true God, and yet, when they see what believers of another God have done, their eyes may still fill with tears. People debate whether hearts are good or evil, and no conclusion is reached. But if you truly study and, by experiment, separate what is true from what is false, if the method of experiment itself is determined, then faith will become like chemistry. Now, look at this book. Do you see? This is a dictionary of geography and history. This page describes the geography and history of 2200 BC, not what actually was in 2200 BC, but what people of that time believed geography and history to be. So this single page is equal to one entire book of history. And what is written here was mostly true for that age. Evidence continues to be discovered, but if you begin to question it, see, turn the page. 1000 BC. Geography and history have changed considerably. That was the truth then. Do not make that face. our bodies, our thoughts, the Milky Way, the train, history, all are simply what we perceive. Now, be still with me. Calm your heart. Good. He raised one finger quietly, then lowered it. Suddenly, Giovanni saw that himself, his thoughts, the train, the scholar, the Milky Way, all together flashed into being, glowed softly, then vanished. And when one spark appeared, the vast world opened. All history was present. Then it faded, leaving only emptiness. This flickering grew faster until everything returned to normal. Now you see. Your experiment must encompass the beginning and end of all these scattered thoughts. That is difficult, but even one moment is enough. Look, there is Praseep. You must untie the chain of Praseep. At that moment, from beyond the dark horizon, a pale blue flare shot upward, bright as day. The train interior was flooded with light, and the signal fire hung high in the sky, shining steadily. Ah, the Magellanic Clouds. Now I will surely search for the truest happiness, for myself, for my mother, for Campanella, for everyone. Giovanni bit his lip and gazed at the Magellanic Clouds, for that happiest of all people. Hold your ticket firmly. You are no longer in the railway of dreams. You must walk with long strides and straight ahead through the fires and fierce waves of the real world. Never lose that one true ticket in the Milky Way. As that cello-like voice faded, the Milky Way grew distant. Wind swept across him, and Giovanni found himself standing upright on the grassy hill. From far away, he heard the quiet footsteps of Dr. Vulcanillo approaching. Thank you. I have conducted a very fine experiment. I was just thinking that in such a quiet place, I wish to attempt an experiment of sending my thoughts to someone far away. Every word you spoke is recorded in my notebook. Now go home and rest. Walk straight on, just as you resolved in your dream. And from now on, come to consult me whenever you wish. I will walk straight ahead. I will seek true happiness. Giovanni spoke firmly. Very well, farewell. Here is your ticket. The doctor placed the small folded green paper into Giovanni's pocket. Then his figure vanished beyond the pillar of the weather wheel. Giovanni ran straight down the hill. He noticed his pocket felt heavy, making a faint clinking sound. Stopping among the trees, he examined it. Inside the strange green ticket he had seen in his dream were wrapped 2 large gold coins. Doctor, thank you. Mother, I'll bring the milk at once. Giovanni cried out and ran again. So many feelings gathered at once within his chest. Sadness, newness, something indescribable. The lyre star had moved far westward, stretching out like a dream. Giovanni opened his eyes. He had been sleeping among the grass on the hill. His chest felt hot and tight, and cold tears ran down his cheeks. He sprang up like a spring. The town below still strung together its many lights, but they seemed warmer than before. The Milky Way he had walked in his dream still hung white and faint above. On the dark southern horizon, it appeared especially misted, and to the right, the red star of Scorpius sparkled beautifully. The sky's position had hardly changed. Giovanni ran down the hill with all his strength. He thought only of his mother, still waiting without supper. He ran on through the dark pine woods, around the pale fence of the pasture, and back again to the dim cowshed by the same entrance as before. Someone had just returned. A cart stood there now, not there earlier, with 2 barrels loaded upon it. "Good evening," Giovanni called. "Yes?" A man in thick white trousers stepped out at once. "What can I do for you?" "The milk didn't come to our house today." "Oh, I'm very sorry," the man said quickly. Going inside, he returned with a bottle of milk and handed it to Giovanni. "I'm truly sorry. This afternoon, I accidentally left the calf's gate open." The young fellow went straight to his mother and drank about half of it. The man laughed softly. "I see. Then I'll take this." "Thank you," Giovanni said. "Yes, I'm very sorry." "It's all right." Giovanni held the still warm bottle with both hands, as if wrapping it in his palms, and left the pasture fence behind. He passed through the wooded streets, reached the main road, and after a while came to a crossroads. To the right, at the edge of the street, the great bridge tower over the river, where Campanella and the others had set their lights afloat, stood faintly against the night sky. But at the street corner, before the shops, groups of women, 7 or 8 at a time, were gathered, whispering, looking toward the bridge. And on the bridge itself, many lights were moving. For some reason, Giovanni felt his chest turn cold. Suddenly, he called out to those nearby, "Has something happened? A child fell into the river." One person answered. All at once, they turned to look at Giovanni. As if in a dream, he ran toward the bridge. The bridge was crowded with people, and he could not see the river. A policeman in white uniform had also arrived. From the foot of the bridge, Giovanni leapt down to the wide riverbank below. Along the water's edge, many lights moved busily up and down. On the dark embankment, across the river, 7 or 8 flames shifted restlessly. In the center, the river, no longer bearing the gourd lanterns, flowed quietly gray with only the faintest sound. Downstream, on a sandbar that jutted out, a cluster of people stood in a dark mass. Giovanni ran toward them. Suddenly, he met Maruso, who had been with Campanella earlier. Maruso rushed to him. Giovanni, Campanella went into the river. How? When? Zanelli tried to push his gourd lantern farther out into the current, from the boat. The boat rocked, and he fell in. Campanella jumped in at once. He pushed Zanelli back toward the boat. Zanelli grabbed the bank, but after that, Campanella wasn't seen. Everyone searching? Yes, they all came right away. Campanella's father, too. But he hasn't been found. Zanelli was taken home. Giovanni moved toward the gathered crowd. There, surrounded by students and townspeople, stood Campanella's father, pale, with a sharp chin, dressed in black, holding a watch in his left hand, staring fixedly ahead. Everyone was watching the river. No one spoke. Giovanni's legs trembled. Acetylene lamps used for fishing moved back and forth, and the dark river water glimmered with small ripples. Downstream, the river reflected the Milky Way so fully that it seemed like the sky itself without water. Giovanni could not help feeling that Campanella was already at the edge of that galaxy, yet everyone still seemed to think that at any moment from between the waves, Campanella might rise saying, "I swam quite far," or that he might be standing on some unknown sandbar waiting for someone to come. But suddenly, Campanella's father said firmly, "It is no use. It has been 45 minutes since he fell." Giovanni rushed forward, wanting to say, "I know where Campanella has gone. I walked with him." But his throat closed and no words came. The doctor looked at him carefully, perhaps thinking he had come to greet him. "You are Giovanni, aren't you? Thank you very much for this evening." Giovanni could only bow. "Has your father returned yet?" the doctor asked, still gripping his watch. "No." Giovanni shook his head faintly. "I wonder what happened. I received important news 2 days ago. He should arrive around today." "Perhaps the ship was delayed. Giovanni, please come visit us tomorrow, after school, with the others." As he spoke, the doctor again gazed toward the downstream river, where the Milky Way shone across the water. Giovanni's chest was full of too many things to speak. Leaving the doctor, he thought only of bringing the milk to his mother and telling her of his father's return, and he ran. straight toward town.